Hey there YouTube, WrestlingOptimus here, back with my action figure review of arguably the most jam-packed wrestling weekend in recent history. That's right, even though AEW was already putting on All In Texas and ROH Supercard of Honor, WWE decided to put on 3 PLEs as well. But remember, they don't consider AEW competition and never counter-program their events. Regardless, I decided to combine all 3 of the aforementioned PLEs into one giant review, with my AEW All-In review potentially coming later. This is gonna be a big one, so enough exposition, let's take it over to the action figures. First up, NXT Great American Bash kicks off with a match between the young OG Javon Evans and the massive newcomer Jasper Troy. Unfortunately, I don't have figures for either man since they're both still relatively new, and that'll be a running theme for this PLE, so graphics will have to suffice. There's a ton of near falls, which makes for a great opening match because it got the fans hot from the start. In the end though, Javon survives a chokeslam and hits the most devastating move in all of wrestling, a surprise roll-up to score the win. We get a skit where Stax tries to challenge trainer Matt Bloom, the former Albert and A-Train, to a Heritage Cup match based on a social media post, but Matt says he was hacked and declines. While they talk, someone steals the cup. Next is another match I don't have figures for, as Sol Ruca defends her women's North American title against Izzy Dame of The Culling. The corner women, Tatum Paxley and Zarya, get into a scuffle at the start, while Izzy hits a powerbomb and almost wins, but Sol gets her foot on the rope. There's more interference from those two throughout the match, which the ref doesn't seem to care about, until Zarya spears the crap out of Tatum. Meanwhile, Sol Ruca hits a Soul Snatcher to get the win and retain. Ricky Saints takes on Ethan Page in a Falls Count Anywhere match for the NXT North American Championship. While they brawl backstage, Jasper Troy, still mad about earlier, attacks Ricky before getting dragged away. Saints and Page fight out onto the stage, where Ethan throws Ricky off with an Ego's Edge through a pair of tables. He hooks the leg and gets the pin to retain. Next is a contract signing between Mike Santana, Joe Hendry, and the TNA World Champion Trick Williams for their title match at TNA Slammiversary. Despite some trash talking, it's surprisingly civil until Trick goes through a table. Then Dark State attacks for some reason and leaves the TNA boys lying. In a promo on the bridge that he made famous, Tony D'Angelo reveals that he stole the Heritage Cup ahead of his match with Stax and Luca Crucifino this week on NXT. And apparently they won't be competing for the cup after all, because Tony throws it off the bridge and into the river. Josh Briggs pumps up Yoshihiko Inamura before he challenges Oba Femi for the NXT Championship. The match itself is a classic hoss battle of 2 powerhouses, but a ref bump allows Briggs to hit Oba with the NXT title. Except Inamura doesn't want to win like that and refuses to make the pin. He goes for a splash instead and gets the visual pinfall, but the ref is still down. When he finally comes to, the match continues with a bunch of big moves and near falls. Briggs tries to interfere again, but Oba hits a fall from grace powerbomb to retain. In the main event, Jordynne Grace teams up with the debuting Blake Monroe, formerly Mariah May, to take on Fallon Henley and JC Jane of Fatal Influence. I'm mad AEW never made a Mariah May figure. TNA isn't really big enough to make figures, let alone for women, so there's no Jordynne Grace. And WWE fired a bunch of NXT women I had just bought figures for, while retaining a bunch of women who don't have figures out yet. So, yeah, sorry, just JC is what you get. Jasmine Nix interferes multiple times until Masha Slamovich from TNA takes her out. Grace plays the babyface in peril until Blake gets the hot tag and runs wild. Later, JC Jane catches an elbow from Jordynne before Blake hits a double-arm DDT on the NXT Women's Champion to pick up the victory. I'm surprised Fallon didn't take the pin, but I'm assuming that'll play into things at Evolution when JC defends her title against Jordynne. Overall, another really solid PLE from NXT like always. In my opinion, they're the most consistently great product in wrestling right now. I know they got buried on Peacock on a Saturday afternoon with a bunch of other wrestling happening around it, But if possible, I suggest you go out of your way to check this out. NXT Great American Bash gets an 8.5 out of 10. Next up, Saturday night's main event kicks off with Randy Orton accompanied by Jelly Roll taking on Drew McIntyre accompanied by Logan Paul following their segment on SmackDown. Drew spends the first half targeting Randy's injured lower back, but Orton fights through the pain. Eventually, Logan gets in Jelly Roll's face, only to get shoved to the ground like the night before. This distracts McIntyre, who turns around into an RKO from out of nowhere. Randy gets the 1-2-3, but Logan attacks him after the bell. Once again, Jelly Roll comes to the Viper's defense, decking Paul with a decent looking right hand, but he's taken out with a Claymore. Wow, I did not see that coming. Nick Aldis and Adam Pearce come running out to scream at Drew for attacking a celebrity guest. The argument continues backstage after the break, but nothing is made official. Later on, Randy apologizes to Jelly Roll. Rhea Ripley and Io Sky are seen in the crowd ahead of their match at Evolution, but when the cameras cut to Jade Cargill, Naomi attacks her from behind and drags her over the barricade. All the officials come running out again to separate them with predictably ineffective results. But that's not where it ends, as Nick Aldis grabs a mic and announces that Bianca Belair will be the special guest referee in Jade and Naomi's no-holds-barred match tomorrow at Evolution. Next, Jimmy Uso challenges his little brother Solo Sikoa for the US title. Sikoa is accompanied by JC Mateo, Tonga Loa, and Tala Tonga, who apparently call themselves MFT now. Mateo is even wearing a shirt that says MFT with their faces on it, but conspicuous by his absence, in person and from the shirt, is the injured Tama Tonga. Has he been kicked out? Side note, I still haven't bought a figure for Solo. I know, I'm a bad collector, but he's been hard to find and he's not exactly at the top of my priority list, especially since I want his Elite, and that's more expensive. Anyway, they had a match where the MFTs kept interfering, as you'd expect. At one point, Jimmy does a corkscrew off the top rope to the outside, taking out Solo's whole group. But since it's network TV, when the fans start chanting, "Holy shit," the audio cuts out completely for about 30 seconds. Shortly after that, Solo rolls up Jimmy while the ref doesn't see Tala Tonga helping, and Sikoa retains his title. Afterwards, Tala gives Jimmy a big boot, then the MFTs beat him down until Jacob Fatu makes the save. I heard his figure is coming out soon and I can't wait. Next up, LA Knight takes on Seth Rollins, accompanied by his still unnamed group, but if you'll indulge me in a Simpsons reference, I'm talking Rollins, Heyman and the Bronze. At one point, Wade Barrett on commentary claims that beating Seth Rollins while you're not 100% might be impossible. Are we just gonna act like Cody didn't beat Seth inside Hell in a Cell with a purple freaking pec, literally hanging off the bone? Wow, I really hope someone got fired for that blunder. Yes, Simpsons reference number 2. They have a decent match until Rollins goes for a moonsault, but Knight dodges, causing Seth to land wrong and injure his knee. He immediately crawls into the corner and consults with Heyman, the ref, and a ringside doctor before struggling to his feet and taking a BFT to give LA Knight the win. This was clearly an audible. Knight gets caught on camera mouthing "fuck" as he storms to the back, probably knowing their plans for the rest of this feud are ruined. Damn, that was a real downer, but at least it wasn't the ending. That's right, in the main event of, well, Saturday night's main event, Goldberg challenges Gunther for the World Heavyweight Championship in what's been called Gunther's retirement match. But wouldn't that heavily imply that he's losing? Because if he wins, he has to come back and defend the belt, right? Right? Whatever. All people care about is seeing Goldberg one last time. For his final walk to the ring, Goldberg is joined by his son Gage, the former head of WCW security who used to join him back in the day, and for some reason Ernest the Cat Miller? I'll hand it to Bill. At his age, it would have been easy to just do an old school squash, get paid, and get out of there. But to his credit, he decided to put on an actual match. He even went through a barricade. And here's the thing, Gunther's offense has been so protected since arriving in WWE that when Goldberg no-sold it, especially his chops, Combined with Gunther's shocked facial expressions, the 58-year-old looked like his old world-beating self again. That's also why Gunther was the perfect final opponent. He adds much needed credibility to this match. Goldberg goes for a spear, but Gunther dodges it, and instead, Goldberg takes out Lil Nate Charles Robinson. Gunther targets the injured knee, ripping off Goldberg's brace and using it as a weapon. Then, Gunther uses the brace to taunt Goldberg's son, but Gage isn't a pudgy little kid anymore. He's a full-grown man. He jumps the barricade, only to be held back by security. That distracts Gunther though, allowing Goldberg to hit the spear and the jackhammer, but not only is the ref still down, Goldberg is too hurt to make the cover even when a new ref comes out. Gunther locks in a sleeper hold, and despite nearly countering it, eventually Goldberg passes out. After a commercial break, Goldberg gives a speech in the ring while surrounded by friends and family. Unfortunately, he forgets this is network, not cable, and there's no overrun, so his speech is quickly cut off. But it's online if you want to see the full thing. Saturday night's main event is weird. It feels bigger than an episode of Raw or SmackDown, but smaller than a true PLE. I guess the only other thing comparable are the Saudi Arabian shows. Either way, that's also what makes it hard to review. This was great for TV, but lackluster for a pay-per-view. Everything was good to great until Seth's injury. Even then, the Goldberg stuff was so well done, I kinda forgot about that by the end. If nothing else, as the saying goes, they sent the fans home happy, especially Goldberg's hometown fans in Atlanta. Saturday night's main event gets an 8 out of 10. Finally, the all-women's PLE Evolution kicks off with a triple threat match for the Women's Intercontinental Championship between Bayley, Lyra Valkyria, and the man Becky Lynch. I recently got a Lyra figure. In fact, it's the Chase variant, but I haven't unboxed it yet. Still, I don't really need her figure because even though Lyra had her moments and put on a great showing, this was all about Becky vs. Bayley. In the end, Bayley hits Lyra with a rose plant, but Becky comes from out of nowhere and gets the surprise roll-up on Bayley to score the pin and retain. Jordynne Grace asks Blake Monroe to join her as she takes on Jacy Jayne, accompanied by Fatal Influence, for the NXT Women's Championship. The winner also gets to take on Masha Slamovich at TNA Slammiversary. It's a really good match, but of course there's shenanigans. First, Fallon Henley tries to interfere, only to catch a headbutt from Blake for her troubles. Then, Jacy tries to use the title belt, but the ref stops her. The belt goes flying and is picked up by Jasmine Nix, who gets clotheslined by Blake. However, Monroe picks up the belt herself and nails Jordynne in the back, allowing Jacy to get the pin and retain. Afterwards, Blake shoves the belt at Jacy and mocks her before leaving. It's clear she's turned heel. Vicky Guerrero is in the crowd and yells, "Excuse me!" Then, throughout the night, we see Jazz, Ivory, Jacqueline, Lolani Kai, Maurice, Tori Wilson, Melina, and Molly Holly. It's time for the Women's Tag Team 4-Way, featuring teams from each brand taking on the champions, Judgment Day's Raquel Rodriguez and Roxanne Perez. Asuka and Kairi Sane reformed the Kabuki Warriors to represent Raw, Zarya and Sol Ruka represent NXT, and the definitely not friends Alexa Bliss and Charlotte Flair represent SmackDown. The two biggest stories here are the NXT newbies trying to prove themselves, and the SmackDown team trying to coexist. This is perfectly encapsulated when Sol Ruka holds Alexa for a spear, but Charlotte saves her, and Zarya winds up nailing her own partner. Everyone rejoins the match and spams their finishers until Roxanne takes out Charlotte and Raquel hits Sol with a Tejada bomb to retain. The WWE Women's Championship is on the line as Tiffany Stratton defends against Hall of Fame legend Trish Stratus. Now, as far as I'm aware, there's only one Tiffany Stratton figure available. It's an Elite and it looks terrible, so obviously I don't have it. And my Trish figure is pretty old, so I apologize. But if WWE isn't going to take their women's figures seriously, then why should I? Anyway, Trish was never winning, but she did play the hits, nailing a Stratosphere and her signature Bulldog before Tiffany hits an Alabama Slam and the prettiest moonsault ever to retain. After more Maybelline commercials, we get a no-holds-barred, aka hardcore match between Jade Cargill and Miss Money in the Bank Naomi, with Bianca Belair as the special guest ref. Naomi's ring gear is covered in razor blades, and although it looks cool, that has to be illegal, right? Right? All the weapons come out for this one. Jade even grabs a camera at one point before putting Naomi in a trash can. Naomi gets revenge by putting Jade through a table and beating her with chairs. But Jade eventually does a very modified Jaded with lots of help from Naomi off the top rope and through another table to pick up the victory. Not the worst, especially for a women's hardcore match. I'm surprised Naomi lost, but the Money in the Bank holder tends to get beaten a lot before cashing in. My bigger question is, what was the point of Bianca other than she's technically part of this story? I will say, she seemed disappointed while raising Jade's hand, so maybe that will play into things a little down the line. Next up is an over-the-top battle royal for a women's world title shot. This includes the United States champion Julia, Nikki Bella, Chelsea Green, Piper Niven, Alba Fire, Ivy Nile, Candice LeRae, Nia Jax, Natalya, Maxine Dupree, Selena Vega, B-Fab, Michin, Stephanie Vaquer, and NXT stars Kalani Jordan, Lola Vice, Jada Parker, Izzy Dame, Tatum Paxley, and Lash Legend. I think that's all of them. Immediately, Nia eliminates Izzy and Tatum. Then Kalani gets thrown out, but makes it onto the commentary desk without touching the floor and walks on her hands a la Kofi Kingston to get back into the ring. The final four are Nikki Bella, Lash Legend, Stephanie Vaquer, and Nia Jax, although Lash quickly eliminates Nikki. That leaves all three brands represented before, shockingly, Lash also eliminates Nia, but she can't overcome La Primera, who delivers a devil's kiss on the ring apron to much applause and eliminates Lash to earn a world title opportunity at Clash in Paris. Stephanie McMahon comes out to congratulate her in Spanish. Finally, in the main event, Rhea Ripley challenges Io Sky for the WWE Women's Championship. The story is that, despite facing off multiple times in the past, usually for championships, Rhea has never defeated Io. Playing into this narrative, there's a ref bump, which leads to a visual pin for Rhea, but not an actual victory. They brawl out into the crowd and do some fun spots off some box-like structures. When they make it back into the ring, the ref starts to recover, and Io hits an over the moonsault, but Rhea manages to kick out. Suddenly, Naomi's music plays, and she comes running down with her own referee. She cashes in, which makes this a triple threat match. That also means it's no DQ, so Naomi grabs her briefcase back and cracks Io in the head with it. Then, she throws Rhea out of the ring, hits Io with a split-legged moonsault, and covers to get the pin, score the shock victory, and become your new Women's World Champion. Wow. That was one hell of an ending. It's safe to say Evolution was the least anticipated and promoted of the three shows heading into this weekend, but the women's division pulled a Michael Jordan meme and took that shit personal, because not only was this show solid start to finish, but there was a lot more star power than Great American Bash, and there were no major injuries to spoil the vibe like with main event. Strangely, I thought Liv Morgan's injury would ruin this card, but I didn't even notice she was missing. And that's no slight on her, just an indication of how much the rest of the division stepped up in her absence. It wasn't perfect, but there were no major flaws either. So, given my other scores already, WWE Evolution gets a 9 out of 10. Alright, that'll do it for WWE's ridiculous weekend of NXT Great American Bash, Saturday night's main event, and the all-women's Evolution. Let me know what you thought of everything in the comments down below. If you liked the video, make sure to do all that normal YouTube stuff. Smash the like button, share with any wrestling or action figure fans you may know, subscribe to the channel, and spread the word. You can also talk to me over on X at WrestlingOptimus, or see all my best figure photography over on Instagram at WrestlingOptimus. I'm also on Facebook and Blue Sky now. If you haven't seen my latest video, you can check that out right here. But until next time, I've been Wrestling Optimus, and I'll catch you later.